Hello, everybody, and welcome to Chart Request Live. My name is Sam Gatlin. I'm an analyst at All Star Charts, and I'm joined today by my esteemed co-host, Mr. Alfonso de Pablo. We were just talking about soccer before we went on air. You want to tell everybody about what happened this weekend?
Hey, what's up, everybody? Great weekend for me. I'm a big fan of soccer, as some of you know. And this weekend, Real Madrid played against Barcelona. I support Barcelona. We won the final in extra time, basically at the last minute of the game. And that feeling of beat, the most, one of the best team in the world in a final. It's very, very exciting and very, very happy for that. So,
That's awesome, Alfonso. What else has been going on? What has your attention in the markets?
well, recently, I've been seeing Bitcoin holding up very well above 90K. For me, the major indexes, battling and trying to reclaim the VWAP from the all-time highs in the S&P 500, that 550 area, it's very, very important, to be honest. The Nasdaq 100, it is right there too, with the VWAP from the all-time highs. So it will be very interesting this week to see how prices react to this critical resistance level, at least in the short term, and see what the bulls can do.
Alfonso, I was noticing that the SPY, this is the actually traded product, this is the ETF, is
Yeah.
above this VWAP anchor to the all-time high. But then if you look at something like the S&P 500 index, which is not traded, is below that level. What do
Yeah,
you
I
think
mean
about
it's
that?
to be honest, it's an area, right? It's not just one specific level. It's an area. That's why we draw and the supports and resistance, with a width at the end of the day, right?
For sure.
It's not just aligned. And we're right now we're just challenging and seeing buyers trying to reclaim this area. So far today, sellers have been showing up in the session. The Nasdaq is down 1% today. The S&P is almost 1% down. So we will see. I mean, it's decision time for the buyers and sellers to see who takes control and see what happens.
I think it's pretty cool how this VWAP coincides with the gap from that April 2nd obliteration day, as I like to call it.
Yeah.
I think it's like that across the board too. It's not just the S&P. So I guess the Nasdaq 100 were above that gap, so that's kind of interesting. A little bit of relative strength there from the Nasdaq 100 for very short time frames. For whatever it's worth. I've been watching the dollar pretty closely here.
Dollar?
I think this is a very important one. And, Alfonso, hear me out. We talk about a weaker dollar being a good thing for US equities pretty constantly. But what if that's not the case? What if US stock market investors should be rooting for a stronger dollar?
Well,
Because that's
that
certainly been the
happened.
case recently.
Yeah,
Other time
exactly.
frames, maybe you could draw that negative correlation, but since the peak earlier this year, the correlation has been extremely positive. The US dollar goes down, US stocks go down too. So a scoop and score back into this range, wouldn't that be a good thing for stock market bulls?
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting. I wrote about that correlation a few weeks ago. If you overlay the Dixie with the S&P 500, you will see that negative correlation from the past years, just decouple basically this year, exactly when the dollar index peaked in January. And what it tells me, I mean, the stock market has been in a corrective wave, of course, and the dollar hasn't been the safe haven assets this time. It's not the same case as in 2022. That the dollar, was the safe haven asset. It was ripping higher. The stocks, were in a correction. and right now it's not the case. So I'm paying attention to see what is going on, and what will happen, and if this correlation will be back in the same place as it did in 2022. But more importantly for me, the dollar, it speaks about the strength in international equities, right?
Yeah, without a doubt.
So
It's still been the relative strength. We could
so
look
if
at like
that,
an EFA SPY
yeah.
ratio. Here it is, flirting with new 52-week highs.
Mhm.
It's hanging in there really well, despite
Yeah.
the S&P 500 rebounding pretty nicely. Alfonso, and let me ask you about gold. So I assume you saw that Barron's magazine cover from the weekend, and that coincides with a pretty nasty price action here. So I think if you look at the GLD, you get a little bit more of a bearish picture with that bearish engulfing candlestick.
Yeah, it can also be.
So do you think not only does we think the odds probably favor a corrective wave here in gold futures, but is that something stock market bulls should be rooting for? We talked about the dollar not being the safe haven. Gold really has been the safe haven that gold bugs tout it to be. So if you want to be bullish equities, shouldn't you be rooting on at least sideways for gold?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you. I mean, that's exactly what is happening this year. The safe haven assets during this corrective wave in U.S. equities have been gold. Gold has been reaping basically in a parabolic uptrend, right? And if you drop an indicator that measures the distance from the 200-day moving average, you will see, I think we're a little bit extended at this point. We are hitting a key Fibonacci extension level, as you're showing it. This is the ETF, but if you do it in gold futures, we're right there. So if there is a place for only for a pause, right? I think this will be it, to be honest. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see some digestion in pricing gold in the coming days and weeks, and seeing some kind of rotation back into U.S. equities and risk on areas.
For sure, and I also love how there's a confluence of Fibonacci resistance up here. Not only do you have this 261.8 from this bigger base, the multi-decade base, coming in here around 3,300, but you also have this shorter term base coming in right around 3,450. So you have a lot of reasons to think about selling gold futures here. Plus, you're very overbought and extended on multiple time frames.
Yeah, if you look at that percentage of the 200-day moving average and compare it to previous to previous cycles, basically, it's normal to see some mean reversion in price when we're this extended. So that doesn't mean the trend will revert lower and we're going to start a new leg lower or whatever, but just a pause within a strong ongoing uptrend. I think that will be very healthy for gold.
For sure. Oh, what do you say we get into the mailbag, Alfonso?
Yeah, let's start. The first one, Hansen is asking us for NTR, a 3-month time frame.
Looking at Nutrien. So we have a $27 billion stock here with a 4% dividend yield. Looks like Canadian. Is this a fertilizer?
Yeah, like a Canadian company. 27 billion market cap. We have the earnings on May 7. So, I mean, the chart's looking very good, right?
Yeah, for sure. Making new multi-month highs here. I think you could also draw a trend line here. We're breaking above this downtrend line. You could draw out something like this. You broke it back here in early January and you've turned it into support, bounced off of it and made new highs. So it's pretty clear that the bulls are trying to carve out some type of tradable low here. Mm-hmm. I think you could also draw horizontal resistance from this peak
Yeah, I like
from
it.
the IPO.
So basically, what we're seeing here, and the way you're marking up this chart is, we're seeing, NTR is in a process of a bottom, right? The first step to change the trend is just to break out a downward trend line. It's doing that as you mark it up early. And now a confirmation of a valid trend reversal will be if we reclaim that former resistance level from the past. So if we get above 60, I think a trend reversal here in NTR is underway.
Yeah, for sure. 60 is that line in the sand. I think you could also use this VWAP from the, when was that? Early 2022 high. I think that comes right around 66. So that would be a nice confirmation. You get a little initial bearish to bullish reversal pattern here at $60, and you get confirmation of that trend reversal at 66. And then you're talking about these retracement levels at 72 and 89, and then potentially back towards this 117 level.
Yeah,
this is shaping up really nicely. I also like to think about Brian Shannon. It's always saying you need to look at where the stock has come from. And this one has rallied, let's see, like over 20% over the last 4 weeks. And that's amazing. Mm-hmm. That's not a bearish characteristic at all. You want to see your breakouts with a lot of upside momentum to have more conviction in it. But I do think that it would make sense for it to acknowledge this level, kind of bounce off of it. And so, yeah, maybe this one takes another few weeks to shape up here. But ultimately, I think if you wait for that close above $60, I think that is the trigger.
Yeah, that could be a good first step. And I love the way you mark up that with the VWAP. That would be a very, very strong confirmation and more conviction to the upside. That's for sure.
Totally. Yeah, and earnings you mentioned coming up on May 7th, so that could be the catalyst to get it out of this base. Nothing's. I don't know if nothing is. What do you think about that? Is anything more bullish than a gap and go, Alfonso? Say this one closes up here right around $60. Heading into earnings, and then it gaps above that level the next day and closes above there. Is there a scenario that you can picture that's more bullish than that?
If we're talking about all-time highs, I will say that. But in this case, definitely it will be very bullish to be honest. And of course you will need some upside follow through. And that gap not being filled, but definitely if we see a very strong reaction from that earnings next week, that could be the catalyst NTR needs.
For sure. I love this one. I noticed Wavy brought along another fertilizer stock in the chat. So it seems like fertilizer is kind of the theme of the day, Alfonso. These stocks don't get enough love. I think when these stocks trend, they're pretty epic. Should we go ahead and look at Wavies?
Yeah, let's take a look. Cool. IPI.
So this is a classic fertilizer stock. It's on the smaller side, so this one can really move whenever it does. It's about $500 million in market cap. I believe this one's from Denver, Colorado. Shout out Denver. So this one is, very involved in the fertilizer. It looks like they also do some business with the energy industry. So that's a little bit different than some of the other fertilizer stocks. So they're super duper leveraged to the price of natural gas. Mm-hmm. So you want to see natural gas trend well to help fuel this trend here in the Intrepid Potash. But here's how I already have it marked up, Alfonso.
I like it.
So we're on that 2022 peak really is the level, in my opinion.
It started already. It completed a short-term burst to bullish reversal pattern. But if we can reclaim that VWAP from that high from 2021, 2022, I think that could be, a confirmation.
Absolutely. I was just measuring out the move here from the March 2020 low to that April 2022 peak, and this one rallied like 2,000%, Alfonso. So
That's crazy.
I'm not joking when I tell you this one can really move once it starts to trend. And I think that time is approaching us before long. And look at how this 38.2 retracement lines up with this August 2022 peak. That just is something I love to see so much. And if you remember back in August 2022, that was a very big time in the markets. A lot of people thought the market had bottomed, stocks were rallying very aggressively. And sure enough, you got new lows in equities pretty much across the board. It was a nasty failed move. And a quick move in the opposite direction came, and then you ultimately bottomed in late Q4 2022. But I think this is a really good level to look to target on the IPI, this 57 level. And I even think you could jump the entry here.
Yeah.
Say that again?
No, how will you trade this one? I mean, will you wait for a breakout above the VWAP? Will you buy it right here above that base breakout from earlier this year? Or, what will you do?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think it just depends on your trading strategy. Like if you're looking to accumulate a common stock position in this one, I think it makes a lot of sense to add on strength above this 34.5 level, which coincides with some former support turned into resistance. I think this is a pretty clear level to trade against. Of course, you'll get confirmation on a close above this VWAP. But if you're more interested in trading like short-term call options, for example, and you need the price to trend your direction and you need it to happen on time, I think you want to wait for a close above this level, because I could imagine, we get this breakout above 34.5. You go up here and kiss this VWAP that's like $3 higher, and then you just dance around here for several weeks, maybe a few months.
We have earnings
Who knows?
next Monday, so that could be another catalyst for this one.
Alfonso, we were just talking about the gap and go.
Yeah.
This one's shaping up for a gap and go.
Well, next Monday, we will see.
For sure.
Or in a few weeks, we'll see if we get that gap and go.
I think it's definitely in the cards, though, Alfonso. This one's shaping up really nicely. I like it a lot. Shout out to Wavy for bringing this one along. Said this is a big base in your face. Indeed it is, Wavy. What else do we have, Alfonso?
Let's take a look at Alexander. Send us VEON.
Cool. So, call this one VEON.
Mm-hmm.
This is a $3 billion telecom stock. This one...
sorry. Continue.
It's from the UAE. They do some business in, Pakistan, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Bangladesh. So if you need exposure to those countries, it looks like VEON is not a bad option.
I mean, you really like how tight it's trading basically the entire year. So I really like this one, to be honest.
So how do you mark this up, though, Alfonso? You could I like buying the resolution of this short-term accumulation pattern. I think that makes a lot of sense. So that would be right around 48, maybe 48 and a half. You got up there today, but the bears pretty quickly stepped in there. So it looks like this one's going to need some more time to shape up here. But I think that is ultimately your trigger, close above that 48 and a half level. But where are you looking to from there? Should this October 21 peak be the target? Because that's only like 10, 15 points of upside.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's just such a messy chart, you know. This one's been
Yeah,
in
it
a
is
nasty
hard.
drawdown for decades now at this point, so it's difficult to define a good level of interest.
I mean,
I'm gonna drop the WAP from the IPO, see if
I'm
that's
doing.
interesting.
I was doing exactly that.
Yeah,
And
I
the
think that
target
would
will be
make a
like,
lot of sense. That's a big level of former highs there in
yeah,
2017. So
yeah. I
maybe a
mean,
target of that 100, big psychological round number. That could make a lot of sense.
yeah. I mean, it has to double. I think it can do it. Um, I like this tight range. I think when volatility is so compressed, it tends to expand and give us wild moves. We don't know the direction, but right now I think the trend is higher, and a break at about 48, 48 and a half. That would be a good confirmation of that. And a logical level, like a target, I think 100 in this specific chart. Of course, we need to clear that 58, 59 level that represents the 2021 highs. But if we do it, I think 100, it will be next, and it will happen very fast.
For sure. Yeah. And this is not a stock that I've heard of, Alfonso. I know you do a lot of work with the international stocks, but I don't know if this one's come across your desk either. The Vion. This is what I love about this show, you know?
Yeah, I like it. Haven't yeah, I think first time or haven't paid attention to this one in specific. But it's looking good. I mean, it's showing some relative strength. If you drop the if you compare it to the S&P, we are right there at a critical level of former support. Now trying to act as resistance, and that ratio, it's at a big level. I mean, if we can break out of that resistance level in the relative trend, I expect this one to complete that tight formation and break out.
For sure. And I was looking at T-Mobile US. They reported earnings last week, had their worst earnings reaction ever last Friday after reporting a top and bottom line beat. So it doesn't really get more bearish than that for earnings reports.
Right.
But I hadn't realized, Alfonso, this one had like doubled in a year. This T-Mobile US, this one is not a joke. I think this is a Hall of Famer. This is $266 billion in market cap. So these telecom stocks, whenever they get going, boy, can they trend well.
Wow. Yeah.
I was also looking at the relative trend too. Here's T-Mobile US relative to the S&P 500. Working on a massive relative breakout.
What a chart.
Yeah, I know. These telecoms don't get enough love.
And
Shout
we're
out
right there.
Alexander.
Yeah. It was a very it was a good one.
Yeah, Vion. I won't forget that one. What else should we look at, Alfonso?
Yeah, let's take a look at Donovan. Is asking us about EZPW.
Cool. I love this one so much. So this is a $900 million pawn shop. And I know it has some pretty extreme short interest, so I'm going to look that up here on my other screen. Looks like it has 22% short interest with a 9 days to cover ratio. That's about as aggressive as it gets. And this is, they're super exposed to precious metals. So not only gold, but also platinum, palladium, silver. I think just if the animal spirits are alive in the precious metals market, I think this is a pretty incredible vehicle. And you also
it's great.
Yeah, man. I mean, look at this. You're running into that 38.2 retracement level. So if you're not long right now, I think you could define your risk against that 16 and a quarter. I think the ideal entry was above this.
Yeah, above 15.
Yeah.
In this case, I will use 15. To be honest, I think that resistance back that peak in 2018, it's a big level, and I like it. I think it's a clear level, to define risk and and this is, above 15, it will mark, a competition of this massive round and bottom formation, a massive, trend reversal. And I think the path of least resistance is higher. I think we will see it at 25. Why not 38, 39?
For sure. And this is like, if you're a big precious metal bull like I am, I have a lot of exposure to like gold mining stocks. So this is a really nice, I don't know how much of a diversifier it really is, but it's a different business than just mining gold out of the ground. The pawn shop business is a pretty interesting way to get exposure to precious metals. So I like this a lot, Donovan.
Look, I like it, and what I like the most too is the short interest. I mean, when you have 20%, I mean, you have been working with a freshly squeezed list, and when you have 20% short interest, it's like adding more fuel to this potential upturn, right? So I really like it.
That's a great way to look at it. It's just like the cherry on top. We already like the precious metal space. We already like financials. There's just a lot of boxes that this one checks. We love big base breakouts. We love the momentum that this one has. And then you just add on the short interest, and that's just, yeah.
And how about the VWAP from the highs?
Yeah.
Let's take a look. Yeah, I mean, yeah, perfect. We're above that level, and this is a good confirmation. I think that break at above 15, it's a good confirmation, and the path of least resistance is clearly higher. We have earnings coming today after the close.
Hey.
So
can we get a gap and go, Alfonso? That would be pretty sweet. You're set up for it, right at that resistance. I mean, look at this. This is the 38.2 retracement. Look at how you whipped up to that, to the very penny. In these last 2 days, you've gotten some doji candlesticks. I mean, the market is just screaming at us that this 38.2 retracement is important. If price can gap above it, boy, watch out for this one.
Yeah, completely agree.
This is sweet. What else should we look at, Alfonso?
Let's take a look. How do you enter a long position in an overextended chart like RNMBY?
What are we looking at here? This is a $70 billion aerospace and defense stock. This one is from Germany.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. It's a monster uptrend, right?
Yeah, it is. And this one started, we hear all these things on the news about how Europe's going to have to spend more on defense because of the Trump or whatever. And that's just happening recently. And that certainly could be fueling this last leg higher. But, this uptrend really started back in early 2022. This thing has been screaming higher. Let's see, over like 1,500% over the last few years. This is nothing new for Europe. These defense stocks have been absolutely crushing it for a long time. And this is a sweet chart. Shout out to who brought this one along.
I don't know the name. Achilles? I don't know if, sorry for my pronunciation.
Shout out for bringing this one along. This is a beast. I haven't looked at this one before.
It's a good one.
Yeah, so here we have fibbed out from this 2018 peak to the 2020 low. As you can see, it gapped above this former high back in March 2022. Kind of reminds me of the Nvidia chart. That was like one of the gap and goes for textbooks. The CMT textbooks are going to have that Nvidia gap and go in the future. And this is a very similar story. You got that gap and go, a little bit of a consolidation. You held the gap, and then sure enough, it's just been off to the races since you bottomed and retested that breakout level in late 2022. So this one, it just really has all of the characteristics of an epic uptrend. And yeah, I love to see how it's respected these Fibonacci extension levels too. You found resistance there after you first broke out. Then you gapped above it with force in early 2023. You found resistance in 2023. It's just all along this uptrend. The market's been respecting these extension levels. I love to see that. So I want to bet that this one's going to find some resistance at this 365 level.
Yeah.
They were asking about how to enter some type of epic parabolic uptrend like this, and it's a really difficult thing to do. I think your best bet is to buy some type of continuation pattern. So that was, I don't know how you want to draw this one up, but something like this. I think this could be your line in the sand right here. So this is a little base action in the context of a soaring uptrend. So I think this right here, right now, is super actionable. You're retesting this former resistance. Will it turn into support? There's only one way to find out. But for now, I see no reason for this level to not hold. So I like this 305, 300 level.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to do it. I think it's, of course, a little bit overextended here. I think we might hit 365. But we're in that we're in a range, right?
Yeah. Alfonso, check out this momentum in the lower pane here. You got extremely overbought after that last earnings report, which is very bullish. There's nothing bearish about that. You get super overbought and strong uptrends. This 14-day RSI almost hit 90. But look at how it's tailed off since then. You've gotten this pretty nasty momentum divergence. This new high was not confirmed by the momentum. So should we be questioning this? Do you think this will really turn into support, or does it just need to go back into the range, consolidate a little bit more, carve out some type of larger pattern? Because this certainly doesn't look good to me.
Well, yeah, it depends how like your time frame, right? Because you can see and you can mark up bearish divergence there, but at the end of the day, you will need a confirmation of price to confirm this divergence, right? So divergence can last, for a long time, but as long as price, doesn't confirm that divergence, it will remain just a divergence here. So the other way to look at it is, price has been in a very bullish regime. Every time that stock stop going up and has a pause, it hasn't breached that 50 level in the 14-day RSI. That could be seen as bullish, as any other indication. I think we're a little bit overextended, of course, and I think some sideways action it will happen on this stock, to be honest.
For sure. Yeah, I think that 365 level is a big one. But if you do get this one above there, I think you could buy it on strength with a target of that 585 level. I think if this one does shape up for a new leg higher, I think that's the way to look at it.
Yeah, and if you're interested in trading this one, it is about risk management, more than anything at this point. I like the way you mark it up. As long as we hold that 300 level, let's call it 300, I think you can give it a shot. But below 300, it will remain, messy, and it will be a chop sideways.
For sure, yeah. Well, Alfonso, what do you say we leave it here for the day? This has been a good show. Did you have a favorite ticker today?
I think that Veon, VEON.
Yeah.
Alexander, I really like that one.
Yeah, that was a great chart.
I like this kind of setups, right? That's what I looking like every single day, every single week. Tight ranges, looking for an explosive move higher or lower. It depends, but in this case, I look, for a breakout here above this level. and the range is very well defined. And this level at 48, it's very well defined. And I think if we get a breakout above that area of resistance, we will get an explosive move. And this one, it's a potential, I don't know, multiplier, depending how you play it.
For sure. This is a great one for all of you that need exposure to Ukrainian telecom too. So shout out this Vion. My favorite chart today was the EZPW, Easy Corp. This one is reporting earnings today after the close. I'm looking for a gap and go above this 38.2 retracement and looking towards that 61.8 as the next target. So that's almost 10 points of upside. I think it could happen pretty fast. This one looks sweet.
Nice.
So thank you all for being here. Shout out Wavy, Alexander, Donovan, everyone in the chat. Thank you so much for being here. And if we didn't get to your ticker, do not hesitate to email us at questions@stockmarketmedia.com, and we will be sure to get to your ticker next time. Alfonso, it was a pleasure doing the show with you today. Thank
My
you.
pleasure. And
And
thank you, everybody.
congratulations on the soccer. That's exciting.
Oh, thanks. I mean, it's a good way to start a week. So
That's
hope
right.
you have a great week, everybody, and see you next time.
Later, everybody.